Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you live from Netroots Nation in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Maybe the biggest question today is it pronounced roots or roots? I grew up in Michigan. It was roots, but everybody else says no, it's roots. Anyway, with us, Markos Moulitsas, the founder and publisher of the Daily Kos, author of American Taliban: How Sex, Sin, and Power Bind Jihadists to the Radical Right. Of course, the website, dailykos.com, has been forever. I mean, you're one of the real groundbreakers in this whole world, and you're part of the DNA of this conference. Markos, first of all, welcome back to the show.
Thanks so much.
It's great to have you with us. What's going on here?
Yeah, for every year I get a lot of credit for people come up to me and say, "Oh, thanks for the conference. This is great." And the real truth of the matter is that I actually had very little to do with the start of this conference. Now, it began as Yearly Kos, and that's part of the reason people think that it's a Daily Kos creation. It was started by volunteers in the Daily Kos community. It wasn't an official Daily Kos event. I saw these guys, they wanted to come together. I said, well, you can use the name. I gave them some verbal support, I guess, but there wasn't a lot of money. There wasn't my staff wasn't involved in it. I didn't have any staff back then, but so it was basically a grassroots organization. Yeah. And first year I was in Vegas. I walked in, and I would have been happy had it been like that boardroom past the water cooler to the left of the vending machine.
65 people.
Right.
Yeah.
You walk in, and it was a real conference.
Yeah.
And to me, the best part about the first year was that afterwards, a New York Times reporter came up to me, and he said, "You know what? I've been covering these sort of liberal conferences for the last 20 years, and this is the first time I've been to one where every session started on time." And that's sort of, one of my themes has always been that us amateurs, people that are passionate about something can actually do things better.
We can make the trains run on time too.
Than the so-called
without becoming fascists.
Right.
That's amazing. So I understand that there was a barn burner speech this morning that opened this thing. I'm hearing secondhand. I didn't catch it.
Yeah, no, I can't either.
We're both working.
Yeah, exactly.
Part
It's
of
the working
problem.
conference.
Okay.
You know what? And every year I say, this is the year I'm actually going to visit it as an attendee and actually enjoy it, as opposed to talking to, doing media and talking to people. And it's hard for me to even walk down the hallway because a lot of people here are very much Daily Kos readers, and they want to stop and chat and give me their advice on how what I should do with the site, or thank me for what the site is doing. And I got to say, that is probably better use of my time than sitting in a panel. Because it's meeting with people who are my readers, and it's important to talk to those guys, and it's important to talk to a broader audience and talk about the broader mission of the Netroots.
Well, let's talk about that. What is the broader mission of Netroots?
Well, the Netroots, it's always been about empowering people, regular people who are not part of any sort of establishment, empowering them to become active in their politics, is to take an active role in the world around them. And to me, the best stories are always people who say, I never really did anything but vote, but I started reading the blogs, and I got involved with Move On, and then I started forwarding emails and writing letters to the editor, and now I'm a precinct captain in my local party, and I'm organizing. And this conference is full of those stories. I mean, these are people who have really taken a serious and active role in their party and in their nation, not because they were some, a consultant or part of some organization, like an old school, like a Sierra Club, and because they've already been doing that, right? These are people who didn't feel like they were part of this political process, and now technology has enabled them to become active members. So that's the broader, and so people that come here are really looking for ways to be more effective in that activism. And it's a lot, you learn, you organize, you meet people online, but then you take that offline where you can actually influence voters and hopefully policy.
Plus, it's a venue for a hell of a lot of great parties. I mean, we were drinking liberally last night. Sam Cedar and I are doing a gig tonight over at the News restaurant.
I've never seen more parties.
I'm doing a book signing Friday night. I mean, it's like.
And we got a Daily Kos party on Saturday night.
Yeah, it's like everything is going on. It's like the center of the universe. What, in your mind, are the issues that progressives should be focusing on between now and the 2012 elections, and how?
Yeah, it's, as far as issues, I mean, obviously the battle over Medicare, protecting Social Security from people from both parties that for some reason have it out for a safety net. I mean, it deeply offends them. They won't touch the defense budget, and it's okay that, the banks, they get away with murder, but God forbid somebody who's worked his or her entire life and earned a pension and earned their Social Security benefits and their Medicare benefits, God forbid that they're able to take advantage of those benefits. I mean, this is somehow deeply offensive to these people.
Well, I think it's more that Wall Street is looking at $2.6 trillion sitting in the Social Security trust fund going, if we could skim 1% off the top of that, we could make a pile of money. And with 1/100th of 1% of that, we can probably buy 200 congressmen and 60 senators.
Right. No, that's about it. And so that's, to me, going into 2012, though, probably the biggest electoral goal is to bring back Speaker Pelosi.
Yeah.
Absolutely critical. We
regain the House.
Regain the House.
Because she did just an absolute kick-ass job. I mean,
She did.
over 200 pieces of major progressive legislation that died in the Senate, which raises the question. You bring back Nancy Pelosi, and you've still got the Senate as the graveyard of legislation. I mean, I did an op-ed a while ago about break California into 3 states, break New York into 2 states, break Florida into 2 states, break Texas into 2 states. You got 10 new Democratic senators in the Senate, and you no longer have 15% of the American public or representatives of 15% blocking and from right-wing, right. Oklahoma at that. But that's not going to happen.
No,
it's not going to happen next week.
But more likely to happen, and not in 2 years, not next year, but a longer-term goal is to get rid of the filibuster. There is no constitutional basis for the filibuster. It's just a rule,
right.
And it can be rewritten.
Well, it's not even a 200-year-old rule.
Yeah, and it was an accidental rule. It wasn't designed to be what it ended up being. And
it's never been used before.
And so what you do is a majority vote of the caucus. So that when you vote for the majority leader, when you vote for the committee assignments, that vote's a majority vote.
But why didn't they do that?
Because Democrats don't want to be accountable for anything, and I got to tell you, and Harry Reid, I got a love-hate relationship. Like every once in a while, I'm like, okay, but when the Democrats got 59 seats back in 2008, right? He came out of the gate not talking about how the Democrats had a mandate, a supermajority. He came out, first thing he says, "Oh, we don't have 60 votes, so what do you expect us to do?" And I think the worst day of his life was the day that Al Franken here in Minnesota got seated, because he didn't have that excuse anymore.
Oh, because then he had 60 votes.
Because he had 60 votes. And probably the second best day of his life was when Scott Brown won that special election in Massachusetts and they lost that supermajority again, because then he had a built-in excuse. And part of it is because he has these Wall Street-bought Democrats in the plain states, particularly the cheap states, the Dakotas and
Ben Nelson's the world.
And Max Baucuses, and so they're not gonna adhere to party line. So he wasn't going to get them. But instead of pushing and whipping and maybe trying to pick up some Republican support from the main.
Well, okay, 2 options.
He surrendered.
One, for years I've been making this joke on the radio that somebody needs to be, and this was when Schwarzenegger was in the governor's mansion in California, somebody needs to stand outside his mailbox in the first of the month and snatch that box of testosterone when it comes from Mexico and, run to Washington, D.C. when Harry Reid's not looking, give him a shot in the butt, right? And
there's a.
But that's not going to happen. I mean, what's it going to take?
I mean, there's an aversion to losing in the Democratic Party. Republicans don't mind losing. I mean, the Paul Ryan vote. I mean, they screwed up because it's deeply unpopular, but they weren't afraid to lose the vote. Mm-hmm. And Democrats are. And instead, things like immigration reform, right? Well, we don't have the votes for immigration reform. Who cares? Have the vote. Latinos that know who's with them, who is against them. And on issue after issue after issue, Democrats are afraid of taking a losing vote, when actually that's actually more of a rallying cry for people like me who say, like, okay, they're fighting, let's fight harder for these people.
Right. So the message that we need to be communicating to Harry Reid, I mean, do you think it's possible that we can be pushing Harry Reid to be more proactive?
He did have a vote on the Paul Ryan, plan, which was a
that was a no-brainer.
Right, but with with the Senate Democrats, no-brainers aren't.
That's true.
Nothing's a no-brainer. Nothing's a no-brainer.
Don't ever bet on anything. That's very interesting. So yeah. I agree, Markos. I think that the biggest. This is a comment Liz Winstead made earlier. Is that more important than content is process right now. We need to be working on process. We need to be building infrastructure. We need to be out there. Markos Moulitsas, thanks so much for being with us
Pleasure.
today.
Thanks so much.
And dailycodes.com, of course. We'll be right back.